Okay, now let's look at a question on relevant costing. I've actually taken this from December 2014 exam paper. So let's read. Remember, always read the requirement of question first. So obviously this is related to relevant costing, so the requirement would be relevant costing. So prepare on relevant cost basis the lowest cost estimate which could be used as basis for quotation. So we need to calculate the lowest cost that we would charge and explain briefly your reason for including or excluding each of the costs in your estimate. So we need to explain why we have excluded a cost which would be irrelevant. We would exclude irrelevant cost, and why we have included a cost, so we would include relevant cost. So let's read from the top. The High Life Co. HL Co. makes sofas. It has recently received a request from a customer to provide one-off order of sofas in excess of normal budgeted production. The order would be completed within 2 weeks. The following cost estimate has already been prepared. So we have direct materials, fabric, wood. So here is the details. So this is how much it normally costs. Then we have labor, we have skilled labor, semi-skilled labor, we have factory overheads. So we have total hours used and the rate, and then square meters used and the rate, which would give you total. Then we have total production or cost. We add administrative overheads at 10% of the total production cost, which gives us total 13,321. Now this is an estimate that has already been prepared. So what are they asking in this question is for us to see whether the costs that are included in this is relevant or not. So the cost that is relevant, we will leave them, and the costs that are irrelevant, we will remove them. So we have costs, and then we have note related to that cost. The fabric is regularly used by HL Co. There are currently 300 square meters in inventory, which costs 17 per square meter. The current purchase price of the fabric is 17.5. Now we already have 300 units in inventory, but we regularly use it. Even though we bought it for 17, that is not relevant. So it is sunk cost. So 17 is not relevant. The current purchase price of the fabric is 17.5. So actually, even though we bought fabric for 17, but we will include it at 17.5. You can see they've included it here at 17 because we already have it in inventory and we bought it for 17, so we included it at 17. So 17 is sunk cost. It is already incurred. So we should include 17.5. Why do we include 17.5? Because it is opportunity cost. If we use the inventory here, then we have to purchase it again. And if we purchase it again, that would cost $17.5. So they didn't ask in this question whether it is a sunk cost or whether it is opportunity cost, but that 17.5 is opportunity cost. Now the value of the material is 17.5. We regularly use it, so 17.5 should be the relevant cost. So let's write in the bottom. So I've already explained, yeah, so why we have taken Obviously, I will not waste time on writing comments, but in exam you have to write it. So we have 200 meters needed, and now the price is 17.5. Why am I using 17.5? Because now it is the new price. So when we use material regularly, we take the replacement cost or the current purchase price as relevant cost. Next, the type of wood which is here is regularly used by HLCO and usually costs 8.5 per square meter. However, the company's current suppliers' earliest delivery time for the wood is in 3 weeks' time. So our supplier will deliver it in 3 weeks. An alternative supplier could deliver immediately, but they would charge 8.50 per square meter. So the normal cost is 8.20, but that takes time, and we need to do this job urgently. Okay, we can't wait. So our second option is to go for another supplier, and that supplier is charging 8.50 per square meters. HLCO already has 500 square meters in inventory, but 480 square meters of this is needed to complete other existing orders in the next 2 weeks. If we already had 500 in inventory and we didn't need it for any other job urgently, we would have used 8.20 as the relevant cost, because we don't have to buy it from the supplier with a higher price, even if we use this material regularly. But because it is said in the question that we already are working on another customer job, it is important to complete that job as well. Maybe there's a penalty if we don't complete it. So we need to use 480 in that job. So what we have left is 500 minus 480 becomes 20. The remaining 20 is not going to be needed for 4 weeks. So we can use that in this job. So 20, we could use the existing. What would be the cost of that? The cost of that would be 8.20, because we regularly purchase it, and we regularly purchase at 8.20. The remaining, which is 50 minus 20 is 30. 30 would be at 8.50. Okay, so the second, we have 20 at 8.20 and 30 at 8.50. Next, the skilled labor force is employed under permanent contracts of employment under which they must be paid for 40 hours per week's labor, even if their time is idle due to absence of orders. The rate of pay is 17 per hour, although any overtime is paid at a time and a half. In next 2 weeks, there is a spare capacity of 150 hours. Okay, so the payment of employee. So usually we have employees based on time. Even though it is mentioned hour basis, but it is a fixed cost because they have a monthly salary. And we are going to give them that salary even if they're not working. So if we are going to give them that salary anyway, and they work on a job, so that means we are not going to give them additional. Yeah? So when you already have employees, they're already working, so there is no relevant cost because you're already giving them that salary. There's no incremental cost. But if because of the job they need to do overtime, for overtime you have to give them extra, then overtime is going to be relevant cost. If overtime is not possible, then it means if they are fully working and overtime is also not possible, it means that we have to take them from another job. If we are taking it from another job, then we would take the contribution of that job plus the basic salary, the basic rate of employee. So let's say another job offers $5 contribution and the basic rate of pay for the employees is $10, then we would have 10 plus $5 relevant cost for labor. So in this case, we have 150 spare capacity idle time, no additional charge, so 0 for that. But how many hours are needed? So we need 200 hours, yeah? Skilled laborers. So we need 200 hours, and we already have 150. That means we need 50 extra. And they said here the rate of pay is 16 per hour, although any overtime is paid at time and half, which means 150%. So point number 3, which is skilled labor. For the 150 hours, there is 0 cost. Okay, you can multiply it by 0, or you could just leave it, but you have to mention that in your comments. But I would like to hear, just for your explanation, we have 150 hours at 0. Why? Because it's idle time. And for the extra 50 hours, we are giving them 16 rate, and overtime is paid at time and half, which means 150%. You could multiply by 150% or 1.50, whichever you like. So we have 1200 relevant cost of skilled labor. Next, there is no spare capacity for skilled workers. If there is no spare capacity, then there are 2 options. One, actually, the 2 options are very common, and the third, there could be another option as well. The 2 options that are very common is either they are doing overtime or they are taken from another job. There could be a third option as well, that we hire other staff. We hire additional staff. So whenever we are hiring additional staff, that becomes relevant as well. Okay, but the most common usually that they have in questions is it would be either overtime or you are taking staff from the existing job. If they are doing overtime, the overtime rate is going to be relevant cost. If we are taking it from another job, it is going to be basic rate plus opportunity cost, which is contribution from that job, which I already explained. If we want to hire additional staff, whatever salary we agree is going to be the relevant cost. So they said here there is no spare capacity for semi-skilled. They are currently paid 12 per hour or time and a half for overtime. It means 12 is the basic rate and then time and a half, which means 150% is overtime rate. However, a local agency can provide semi-skilled workers for 14. So this is that other option I was talking about. We could hire additional staff. Now, when you look at 12 and you multiply by 150%, which is 1.5, whichever is easier for you, both of them mean the same thing. It would cost $18, but the agency is offering 14. So we would go with whichever is the lowest. So then 14. If this was less, for example, we were giving them 110%, then the rate would have been 13.2. Then we would have gone with 13.2. But now, in this case, we are giving them time and a half, which is $18. So going for the third option, which is talking with the agency and hiring their staff, would be good. So point number 4, which is semi-skilled, would be how many hours do we need? 300 hours. So 300 hours at 14, which is 4,200. Next, the absorption rate is the $3 is absorption rate. Remember, we studied in relevant costing that notional costs are not relevant. They are theoretical, but sometimes when they say overheads, ignore it, don't include it. It is not relevant. But when there is explanation given about that overheads, you need to read it. Maybe some part of it is relevant. Okay. So if they said overheads, like here overheads is written, and here as well overheads is written, if there was no explanation given, I would have ignored it. I would have said irrelevant. Okay. But now let's read the explanation and see whether it is relevant or not. So like fixed cost is irrelevant, but when they give you explanation about that fixed cost and you see that it is incremental fixed cost, then it would be relevant. So the $3 absorption rate is HLCO's standard factory overhead absorption rate. This is standard rate. 1.5 per hour reflects the cost of the factory supervisor salary. Another 1.5 per hour reflects general factory overheads. The supervisor is paid an annual salary and is also paid 15 per hour for any overtime he works. So the normal salary that is paid, the general factory overheads, they are irrelevant. They are going to be incurred whether we take this job or not. Now remember, it doesn't mean you shouldn't include overheads in units cost. That is something else. We don't cost our units by relevant cost. Relevant cost is when we are taking a decision, one-off decision or something like that. So here the general factory overheads, the supervisor salary, that is going to be incurred anyway, whether we take the job or not. But if there is any additional cost that is going to be incurred because of this job, then it is going to be relevant. In this question, they said the supervisor is paid an annual salary and is also paid 15 per hour for any overtime he works. If he works overtime, then that overtime could be relevant. He will need to work 20 hours overtime if this order is accepted. So any other cost that is there is irrelevant. Only that 20 hours overtime that supervisor works is relevant. Okay, so other overheads removed. 20 hours at 15 per hour, which should give you 3,300. Next, this is an apportionment of general overheads incurred by HLCO. Apportionment irrelevant. Okay, so general apportionment of overheads is irrelevant cost. So if we wanted to quote a price for this job, then we would add all these costs and find a total. That would be our answer.